Previously on episode 1, part 1 of the Zoom Where It Happens, we spoke with 4 wonderful applicants about creating your interview space and scheduling virtual interviews. Today, on episode 1, part 2, we will get into the pre-interview socials and everything that goes along with them. Thanks for joining. Let's get to it. Today I'm going to talk about different things related to social hours or pre-interview social events. And so I wanted to ask one of our Twitter friends, Becca, here. So I'm just going to have Becca maybe introduce herself briefly, what she's applying to and how this year is going for her.
Hi everyone, and thanks so much for having me. It's nice to be part of this conversation. I'm 4th year at Brown's Medical School. I'm currently dual applying into med peds and some categorical internal medicine programs as well. And so far the interview season, I mean, it's new to all of us that are applying. So it's going well though. And it's been really fun to meet a lot of people so far on the trail and get to know like so many amazing programs.
What formats of these pre-interview day events have you attended?
Yeah, so I think most that I've attended so far, which has been limited in the number of interviews I've done so far, but most are like an hour or two the evening prior to the interview, and they're kind of open to all, or in some cases like required for all people that are interviewing the next day. Usually they're primarily run by residents, sometimes with like an administrative program coordinator helping sort of moderate and do the tech as well. And most of them have had breakout rooms kind of throughout the hour or hour and a half. I have gone to one, like it wasn't a pre-interview social, but it was like a sort of similar type thing for one program that was kind of an opt-in social hour specifically for anyone who was like interviewing who like identified as LGBTQ. And that was just at not like the day before my interview, it was like at a random time. But that was also had breakout rooms and had actually a lot more faculty as well as residents, which was really cool.
That is cool. Have there been any pre-events that we're talking about that you've chosen not to go to? Or I heard you mention that you said some were required actually.
Yeah, so there are a couple of programs that have, specified like, please, this is like considered part of the interview, like plan to come. And most have been like, we'd love for you to come, let us know if you're going to come or if you're not going to come. But I think for me, it's all information gathering. And so I've definitely, shown up to everything.
So if you had to think about what makes a successful event, if there was a secret ingredient that you found, what would that be so far?
I think it's really structure. And I think, many programs have really wonderful residents and wonderful applicants, but I think that the more structured the like interview event is, it kind of gives form to what could otherwise be just awkward looking at each other on the internet. So I think, breakout rooms, I think are the most critical aspect actually of just creating like the most semblance of like just being able to have a conversation with one person or a small group of people. I think that makes it really accessible and easy to engage.
All right, well, I have kind of like a final parting question, a parting thought I wanted to ask you. So as we're thinking about the role that these type of events play, I think often programs are using them to sort of fill a void that might have been there from a residency dinner, should we have been there in person. I guess I want to pose this phrase to you, which is the juice worth the squeeze? What are you getting out of it? Was it worth your time? Do you feel like it's an overall positive thing that should stay, or you got everything you needed out of the day, the actual interview day?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. And I think it's especially important because if only for the fact that, residents spend a lot of time doing these, and we already know that residents are really pressed for time and have really busy, demanding schedules, especially, you know, in this like moment of, you know, pandemic surging. And I think it's a really important question to ask, because I think they're putting a lot of time and energy into it. I think that for me, you know, I've tried to be very intentional about limiting the places that I interview at, and really dedicating a lot of time and energy into like learning as much as I can about the places that I feel really interested in, and not over interviewing this season. And so for me, I think given that, I think it feels like extra information in a different setting that feels helpful, and also kind of a nice preview usually of the next day. Sometimes like I'll have shown up and already know a resident from the night before, and that just feels like a much more comfortable sort of entrance. Like people are like, oh, hey, Becca, it's nice to see you again. And I like that. So for me, I do think it's an important question. I think we have to be really mindful of the burden that we put on residents, especially. But I think that especially if people are being mindful about like the number of places that they interview at, and things like that, I think it's worth it for me.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for talking with us today. We look forward to following you and your journey on Twitter, and best of luck to you this season.
Thank you so much. It was really nice to meet you and talk.
Well, before we begin, I thought I would have you just introduce yourself to everyone listening and what you're going into.
Yeah, so I'm Jose Dominguez. I'm an MS4 at Baylor College of Medicine, and I'm applying to psychiatry this cycle.
Awesome. Right now, we're covering pre-interview day events and what might happen and everyone's experiences. And I'm really interested to see what you've come across so far. So could you just tell us broadly what formats or categories or types of pre-interview events have you done with different schools?
I think that maybe because of everything being virtual, the pre-interview event isn't necessarily always pre-interview anymore. Sometimes it's after the interview, or sometimes it's asynchronous with when your interview is. But generally, it's been like a resident social hour. Like everyone gets on Zoom. Yeah, like I know that for a lot of applicants like myself, it's really important to know like what the city's like, and you know what the city is like for people of color, what the city is like for queer people, what the city is like for parents. And so like if you're not paired with a resident in those breakout sessions who fit into those categories, a lot of times you just end up following up over email anyway. So it's different. It works. It's just a different kind of situation.
If there was sort of like a secret ingredient to these kind of events, what do you think is the most important for a program to do? Yeah.
So I mean, I alluded to it previously, but I think that a lot of the benefit of the resident social hour to me is you're getting to ask maybe franker or more hot topic questions than you might feel comfortable asking the PD. Yeah. And so the hour that sticks out to me as being really beneficial was an hour that this particular program had dedicated to diversity related issues. And so, you know, if you were a person of color, if you were a queer person, if you had any kind of very specific questions related to living in the city that related to who you were, this was a time to ask them. And they had specifically recruited residents who fit those categories. And so it felt much more natural to say, hey, do you feel safe in your city, at this time of night? Do you feel safe dating? Do you feel safe, walking around and just like being the person who you look like, at this time? And I think that, across the board, it was really affirming to me to have this space where the residents who had organized it started by saying, hey, we know that this is a concern for folks. This is, this was a concern for us when we were, in your shoes. So let's just make it clear off the table, if you want to ask us about, where's a great place to live and what the cost of living is, we can talk about that too. But, one resident said, but if she was a Black woman, she said, but if you want to have questions about what it's like as a Black resident, working with, this, particular patient population, and whether or not, I felt supported, as a resident by faculty, by admin, in navigating some patient encounters where racism and bigotry were factors. Let me tell you, these were my concerns. this is what the program did. This is why I feel that this is a program that like sees me for who I am as a Black woman, as a resident with, specific concerns and values related to my identity. And, that's what I want to make sure that you as applicants feel safe discussing. So that was great. That was something that really meant a lot. And that did improve that particular program's esteem in my eyes, because it was, I'm hearing from residents what the program has done to make them feel safe and make them feel comfortable. But then it's also a program where when a resident said, hey, I want to start this initiative because it's important to me and because I know it'll be important to other, minority applicants, they said, oh yeah, absolutely. Here are the resources that we can give you to make this happen. So. Wow.
That's really impactful.
Yeah.
How does that, if at all, change how you think about or how you go about evaluating programs that don't put that out so forwardly? Or I guess, what would you say to programs who haven't yet adopted that similar tool?
Yeah, no, and I think that it's not a negative necessarily not to have a resident social hour specifically dedicated to issues of diversity, but it's a huge positive. So, I mean, I guess the benefit of this cycle being virtual is that the opportunity cost of setting up another Zoom and wrangling people together is pretty low.
Yeah.
So if there are any programs out there that still have the time and energy to organize an hour for, like issues of diversity and for applicants for whom that's a concern, I'd say absolutely go ahead and do it, because it's a small thing that for me was really reassuring. Programs that haven't had that specifically, it was, again, like it wasn't a negative. It wasn't, I didn't walk away thinking like, oh, they don't value diversity. But it's like the unspoken, communication that, oh, because we set this up, know that this is a place that's dedicated to issues and is thinking about these issues critically. It's the extra bit of signaling that, like if I, 3 years down the line, having a conversation with a patient, and because I am Latino and they're Latino, like something comes up that has affected my community that makes, that particular therapy session a little bit more difficult for me. Knowing that, oh, well, this program has already signaled that, there'll be faculty who are, willing to hear me out. There are resources that, I can, use to voice my discomfort and to process that experience. That means a lot. And I know that is a very like psych specific example, but I'm sure that is
but
true,
it's real.
True regardless of what specialty you're going into.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. But if you were to speak to other Latino applicants, what would you want to say to them, or what kinds of things, would you want them to hear from you?
Yeah, so I think, I'm going to be specifically for Latinos, but like for anybody who is an underrepresented minority in medicine or belongs to the minoritized community, like you're applying and you're here, and you should be proud of how much progress you've made regardless of what happens. Like in a lot of ways, medicine historically has not included people like us. And you are one of the people who has made it this far. And you've been able to, through hard work and through the generosity of mentors, shown yourself to, at the very least, be someone who can get into medical school and who can succeed on clinics and can get to the point where, when your deans are writing your MSPE, able to say, like, this is a good applicant. So whatever happens, come March, because I know that just across the board, we're all sweating, like what happened in March. Like you're here, you made it, and like that effort deserves to be recognized.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks so much for your time today, speaking with us. I wish you the best of luck on the rest of the season, and we'll follow your path on Twitter as it goes forward.
Thank you. Good luck to you too.
Great.
Sure. Thanks so much to everyone for tuning in. Our first kind of fledgling episode, and hopefully you enjoyed it.
That's right. It came together in the end, I think. So I think next episode, we're going to try to cover the interview day itself, but specific to the structure of the day and how it's put together. So what do you guys think? What should we bring up then? What kind of topics should we talk about?
So maybe things like layout or length of the interview, because it can vary from like 15 minutes to like, 30. What's too long? What's too short? That's one thing we could talk about.
Yeah, and kind of the organization of the interview, how much time do you get with each kind of stakeholder throughout the day, things like that.
Yeah, that's all really interesting. It seems like each program has kind of their own thing going, and there have been some real advantages to how certain ones are laid out. So I think it'll be interesting to get a wide variety of what people and applicants have experienced and kind of find what's working well. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great. And hopefully it'll give us some ideas to improve our interview day.
Yeah. As we work toward, I have a feeling that interview season will remain virtual to some degree going forward. So I guess now's our time. Let's figure out how to do it best. Awesome. All right. Well, until next episode, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you then.